Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the world of military logistics,
Oh, yeah.
specifically the Freight Carrier Registration Program,
Okay.
or FCRP for those in the know.
Right.
It's basically how the Military Surface Deployment and Distribution Command, or
Mhm.
SDDC, makes sure that only qualified carriers are moving all that military freight.
Makes sense.
We've got like a welcome package right from the Department of the Army.
Oh, wow.
It's packed with information.
Cool.
Think of this deep dive as like your cheat sheet
Okay.
to understanding this whole process.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating look at how the Department of Defense,
The DoD.
the DoD vets and manages all their transportation partners.
Huh.
And we're going to unpack why these procedures exist
Okay.
and what they tell us about the DoD's priorities.
So we're not just talking about tanks and helicopters here.
No.
This is like the whole system.
Exactly. This impacts the entire transportation industry.
Wow.
So let's start by deciphering what the FCRP actually is.
Okay.
Essentially, it's the gateway for any transportation service provider out there.
Yeah.
Whether they're a common carrier or a broker,
Mm.
logistics company, you name it.
Freight forwarder.
Yeah, freight forward. If they want to work with the DoD, they got to go through this.
Sounds like a pretty exclusive club.
It is.
What are some of the hoops that carriers have to jump through to get in?
Well, the welcome package outlines a 9-step registration process.
9 steps.
9 steps.
Oh, boy.
And it's pretty detailed.
I bet.
Right off the bat, carriers need to get something called a Standard Carrier Alpha Code,
Oh.
or SCAT,
As a scat.
from the National Motor Freight Traffic Association.
What is that?
So a SCAT is basically a unique 4-letter code
Okay.
that identifies transportation companies.
Huh.
Think of it like their secret agent code name
Okay.
within the industry.
Gotcha.
It's used for communication and tracking.
Right.
Make sure everybody's on the same page about, who's moving what.
Okay.
But getting that SCAT is just step 1.
There's more.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Much more. They also need to register with sam.gov
Okay.
and get a unique entity identifier,
Which is
or UEI.
a UEI.
That's basically a digital fingerprint
Huh.
for businesses working with the government.
Okay.
It's a way to streamline identification and communication.
So it kind of cuts through the red tape.
Exactly.
I'm guessing there are some financial hoops to jump through, too.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
The DoD wants to make sure that they're working with partners that are financially stable
Right. Makes sense.
and reliable.
Yeah.
So carriers need to set up electronic payments
Okay.
through this system called U.S. Bank Syncada.
U.S. Banks and Kata.
Yeah, and then there's the requirement for a performance bond.
Okay.
And this is where it gets interesting.
Right.
This is not the same bond
Okay.
that's required by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration.
The FMCSA.
Yeah, the FMCSA.
So why does the DoD need a separate performance bond?
Well, it's all about mitigating risk.
Okay.
But risk that's specific to the DoD's needs. This bond protects them if a carrier fails to deliver.
Okay.
Like defaults or abandoned shipments.
Right.
Even bankruptcy. It ensures that the military's operations aren't disrupted
Okay.
because a carrier is financially unstable.
So it's kind of like a safety net
Exactly.
for the DoD, given how important their cargo is.
Exactly. And on top of that, performance bond.
Okay.
Carriers need cargo insurance,
Uh-huh.
potentially a HAZMAT certificate
Right.
if they're dealing with hazardous materials,
Of course.
and they have to meet the Department of Transportation Operating Authority requirements.
DOT.
Yeah, DOT.
Sounds pretty rigorous.
It is.
Are there any exceptions to these requirements?
There are. And this is where we see the nuances
Yep.
of the FCRP.
Yeah.
Certain types of carriers,
Right.
like those handling barge or rail, ocean, air freight, and pipelines,
Oh, wow.
they're actually exempt from that performance bond requirement.
Interesting. Why do you think those carriers get a pass?
It probably comes down to how the DoD assesses risk across the different transportation modes.
Okay.
These modes with their established infrastructure.
Right.
And regulations are probably seen as less susceptible to those financial risks
Gotcha.
that the performance bond is designed to mitigate.
So they trust those systems
Well, you see,
enough to streamline the process.
yeah, for those specific carriers.
So the type of cargo and how it's transported really influences the level of scrutiny.
It seems that way.
Huh.
And it's not just about the mode of transport.
Okay.
The FCRP also recognizes that different types of carriers have unique needs and challenges.
Okay.
So bulk fuel carriers
Right.
have a different performance bond amount.
Okay.
And surface freight forwarders.
Yeah.
They have a whole other set of regulations to navigate.
So it's not one size fits all?
No, it's not.
What about experience?
Yeah.
Does that play a role in how carriers are evaluated?
Absolutely. Experience matter.
Okay.
Carriers with a proven track record
Okay.
of working with a DoD for at least 3 years.
3 years.
They can submit a performance bond based on their previous DoD revenue.
So it's like a loyalty reward
You could say,
for consistently delivering the goods.
literally.
Literally, but getting registered
Right.
and meeting those initial requirements is just the beginning.
It is.
Okay, so let's say a carrier navigates all these initial hurdles,
Okay.
gets registered. What happens next?
That's where it gets even more interesting.
All right.
Getting registered is like getting your foot in the door.
Okay.
After they're approved,
Uh-huh.
carriers get access to all these DoD transportation programs
Okay.
and training resources through something called TEAMS.
Teams.
Yeah, the Transportation Enhanced Access Management Service.
What kind of training are we talking about here?
Oh, it covers a wide range of topics from like navigating the DoD's transportation systems
Huh?
to submitting tenders and bids
Okay.
to understanding the whole world of transporting sensitive cargo. It's like a crash course in all things DoD transportation.
Makes sense. They want to make sure their partners are up to speed.
Exactly.
And I imagine transporting sensitive cargo comes with its own set of challenges.
Absolutely. We're talking things like Transportation Protective Services or PPS
Yeah.
and the transport of arms ammunition and explosives
Oh, wow.
or A&E.
AA&E.
These areas require like specialized knowledge
Yeah.
and really stringent security measures.
Right, because transporting weapons and explosives
Yeah.
adds a whole other layer of complexity
It does.
and risk.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the unique requirements for handling those types of shipments?
Well, for starters, only asset-based carriers are eligible,
Asset-based.
meaning they have to own and operate their own equipment.
Okay.
This makes sure there's direct control and accountability over that transport process.
They want to minimize the number of parties involved
Exactly.
when you're dealing with that kind of cargo.
Right. And it doesn't stop there.
Oh,
There are additional layers of scrutiny,
like,
including thorough background checks
okay.
on the company ownership and key personnel,
Right.
verification of hazy map permits,
Uh-huh.
and like stringent safety rating evaluations.
Wow.
They really leave no stone unturned when it comes to vetting carriers for these types of missions.
So it's not just about having the right trucks or ships. It's
Right.
about demonstrating that culture of responsibility
Yeah,
and vigilance.
exactly.
And even after going through all that training,
Right.
carriers need to stay informed.
They
So
do.
the SDDC issues advisories.
Yeah, with critical updates.
Then carriers are responsible for keeping their contact information current.
They are.
So it's an ongoing process
It's
of learning and adapting.
That's the nature of military logistics.
Right.
Things can change rapidly,
I bet.
and carriers need to be flexible and responsive.
To facilitate that constant communication,
Yeah.
some carriers may need to set up a trading partner agreement or TPA.
A TPA?
This lets them use electronic data interchange, or EDI, to communicate with government systems.
Right.
EDI. I'm not familiar with that.
So think of EDI as the digital language
Okay.
that allows businesses and the government to exchange information
Mm-hmm.
securely and seamlessly.
Okay.
It streamlines processes, reduces errors,
Right.
which is really important when you're dealing with, time-sensitive and critical shipments
So it's like a direct line of communication.
Yeah.
Making sure everybody's on the same page.
in real time.
In real time.
That's
a great way to put it. And the welcome package
Yes.
that we're looking at really highlights
Uh-huh.
the importance of accuracy
Yes.
and staying up to date with your FCRP information.
Absolutely.
Why is that so critical?
Well, any discrepancies or outdated information
Okay.
can lead to miscommunications,
Right.
delays, even security risks.
Oh, wow.
The DoD relies on accurate information
Yeah.
to ensure that their supply chain is running smoothly and securely.
But don't worry, the SDDC doesn't just leave carriers to figure this out on their own.
No, they don't.
They offer support.
Absolutely. They offer a wealth of resources,
Right.
including a dedicated customer service hotline,
Right.
online user manuals
Right.
for all their different systems,
Right.
and even specific email addresses for different departments within the SDDC.
Wow.
They've really tried to make the process as user-friendly as possible,
That's good to hear.
even though it is pretty complex.
So for our listener who might be considering entering this world of military freight transport,
Okay.
what are some of the key takeaways so far?
I would say preparation and attention to detail
Okay.
are really paramount.
Okay.
The FCRP is a multifaceted process
Uh-huh.
with a lot of stringent requirements.
Right.
But it's all in place to ensure the safe and efficient transport of all that vital military cargo.
It sounds like a challenge.
It is.
But a potentially rewarding one.
For sure.
For carriers that are up to the task. It sounds like we've just scratched the surface here.
We have.
Of this fascinating program.
There's more to come.
We'll be diving deeper.
Yes.
Into the post-registration process. We'll explore those intriguing exemptions.
Okay.
And uncover some surprising aspects of the FCRP
Right.
that you might not expect. So stick with us.
Please do.
As we continue our deep dive into the Freight Carrier Registration Program.
All right.
We've established that getting into the FCRP is no walk in the park.
It's not.
It's a multi-step process with a lot of documentation, a lot of requirements. But you mentioned there are some exemptions to those requirements. Let's unpack those.
Okay. So as we talked about before, barge rail, ocean air freight, and pipeline carriers, they don't need a performance bond.
I'm still curious about why that is.
Yeah.
What makes those modes of transportation so different in the eyes of the DoD?
Well, I think it comes down to a few things.
Okay.
These modes often have really well-established infrastructure and existing regulations that give the DoD a certain level of assurance.
Okay.
Think about rail transport, for example. It's a fixed system.
Right.
There's less flexibility in terms of routing and handling.
Compared to trucking.
Exactly, compared to trucking, which could mean a lower risk of things like cargo abandonment or carrier default.
So the DoD is factoring in the inherent characteristics of each transportation mode when they're assessing risk.
It seems like it.
Makes you wonder what other exemptions there might be.
Well, another interesting one applies to local drayage carriers.
Okay.
The ones operating within a commercial zone, they, along with those involved in barge rail, sea lift, and pipeline transport, are exempt from the cargo insurance requirement.
So location and the specific type of transport play a big role.
They do.
In determining which rules apply.
It's not just about the carrier themselves.
It's not.
No, it highlights the DoD's focus on tailoring the requirements to the specific circumstances of each transport scenario.
Interesting.
But it's important to note
that
these exemptions don't mean a complete free pass.
Right, of course.
These carriers still need to meet other FCRP requirements.
Okay.
Like getting a CSCAC and going through the vetting process.
Right. It's not like they can just show up with a barge and be like, we're here to haul tank.
No. The exemptions streamline certain aspects. But they don't negate the core principles of security and accountability that are the foundation of the FCRP.
The foundation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about what happens after a carrier gets through all those hurdles.
Yeah.
Gets the green light. What does it actually mean to be a registered FCRP carrier?
Well, it opens doors to a whole new world of opportunities. Within the DoD's transportation network, registered carriers can participate in solicitations for volume moves and special services.
So they get to be a part of that logistical machine that keeps the military running.
Exactly. And this is where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Especially when we look at Transportation Protective Services, or TPS.
TPS.
And the transportation of arms, ammunition, and explosives, or AAE.
Okay, this is where my inner action movie fan gets excited.
I know, right?
What does it take to transport that kind of sensitive material?
It's a high-stakes area. With even more stringent requirements.
Like what?
Only asset-based carriers can do it.
Right.
Meaning they have to own and operate their own equipment.
Okay, so even more limited.
Yeah, this ensures direct control and accountability.
Right.
Over the whole transport process.
Makes sense. They want to minimize the number of hands touching things.
Exactly. And there's more.
Oh, boy.
There are thorough background checks.
Okay.
On company ownership and key personnel.
Right.
Verification of HAZMAT permits. And really strict safety rating evaluations.
Wow. So they're really looking for the most reliable and secure carriers.
Absolutely.
To handle those high-risk shipments.
That's the goal.
But even after jumping through all those hoops, getting registered, it doesn't end there.
Doesn't.
Carriers need to stay informed.
They do.
Adapt to changes in regulations and procedures.
That's the reality of military logistics.
Right.
Flexibility and responsiveness are key. If you want to succeed in this world.
The SDDC plays a crucial role.
They do.
In keeping carriers informed. By issuing advisories.
Right, with essential updates and changes.
And carriers are responsible.
They are.
For keeping their contact info current.
Yes, to make sure they get those communications.
So it's a two-way street.
It is.
The DoD provides the information, and the carriers have to stay engaged.
And up to date.
And up to date.
Yes.
And to help with that,
Yeah.
the FCRP encourages the use of electronic data interchange.
Right, or EDI.
You mentioned EDI before.
I did.
Remind me what that is.
Okay, so EDI is basically a standardized way for computers to exchange business documents electronically.
Yeah.
Think of it like a universal language that allows different systems to talk to each other.
So instead of relying on paper documents and manual processes, everything is streamlined.
Exactly.
It's digitized.
EDI minimizes errors, speeds up transactions, improves transparency.
All important things.
Yes, especially in the fast-paced world of military logistics.
And to participate in EDI, carriers need to set up a trading partner agreement.
Right, a PPA.
With the DoD. It sounds like EDI is a real game changer.
It is.
In terms of efficiency and accuracy.
For sure. And the welcome package really highlights the support systems in place to help carriers navigate the FCRP.
What kind of support are we talking about?
Well, the SDDC offers a ton of resources designed to help carriers every step of the way.
Like?
There's a dedicated customer service hotline for immediate help with verifications or questions. They also have online user manuals for all their different systems, like TEOW, ATR, and CPM.
What are those systems used for?
Well, TEOW is the Transportation Electronic Ordering Web. That's used for submitting tenders and bids. ATR is the Automated Transportation Request System that manages transportation requests. And CPM is the Carrier Performance Module that tracks performance metrics for each carrier.
That's like a digital dashboard for managing all aspects of the transportation process.
Exactly. And they even provide specific email addresses for different departments within the SDDC. So carriers can reach the right people with their questions.
It's impressive how much effort they've put in to make the FCRP user-friendly, given how complex it is.
They've really tried to make it as easy as possible.
It speaks to the DoD's understanding that successful partnerships rely on clear communication, accessible support systems.
They want to empower carriers to succeed.
So amidst all these regulations, procedures, are there any aspects of the FCRP that might surprise our listeners?
One thing that stands out to me is the DoD's commitment to transparency. Not just within their own operations, but in how they interact with their carrier partners.
Transparency, how so?
Well, for example, the Carrier Performance Module, or CPM, that we just talked about, tracks service failures and non-selection incidents.
For each carrier?
For each carrier. It's like a performance report card.
Interesting.
That both the DoD and the carrier can see.
So it's not just about catching carriers doing something wrong.
No.
It's about providing feedback. Opportunities for improvement.
Exactly. Carriers can see their own CPM records.
So
they can identify areas where they might need to improve.
So it's a collaborative approach.
It is.
To ensuring quality service.
It's a partnership built on mutual accountability.
And this emphasis on transparency extends to other areas of the FCRP as well.
It does. For example, the welcome package talks about carrier affiliations and ownership transparency. Carriers have to disclose any affiliations they have with other transportation companies,
including
their SGIS and DOT numbers.
Why is that level of disclosure so important?
It helps the DoD assess potential conflicts of interest and maintain a level playing field.
So it's about fair competition, preventing any undue influence.
It also shows the DoD's commitment to ethical conduct and responsible business practices.
So they want to make sure the entire FCRP system operates with integrity and transparency.
Exactly. And this commitment to ethical practices goes beyond just business dealings.
How so?
The source material mentions the McNamara-O'Hara Service Contract Act, or SCA, which ensures fair wages and benefits for employees involved in transporting DoD freight.
So it's not just about moving cargo quickly. It's about ensuring ethical labor practices.
Throughout the supply chain.
Throughout the whole thing.
Yes, it shows that the DoD recognizes that social responsibility is important.
It's all connected.
It is.
Now, as we get deeper into the FCRP, are there any aspects that you find particularly noteworthy?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is the level of scrutiny applied to security measures. Both physical and informational. The welcome package says that carriers agree to unannounced safety and security inspections.
Unannounced. Of their facilities' employees' procedures, the whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards. That's a pretty big commitment.
It is why such a stringent approach.
What it really underscores the importance of security in military logistics.
They got to be sure.
They have to be absolutely sure.
That everything is safe and secure.
That their carriers are upholding those high standards.
At all times.
Yes, these unannounced inspections are like a deterrent against complacency.
Okay.
And they reinforce how serious this responsibility is for FCRP carriers.
It's like a constant check
to
make sure everything is running smoothly, securely.
And it's not just about physical security. There are also guidelines about information handling.
Okay, so what are those?
The source material says that carriers can't disclose any information to unauthorized people about the nature, quantity, destination, or routing of protected commodities.
So it's all about operational security.
Yes, preventing sensitive information from getting into the wrong hands.
And this vigilance extends to the digital world, too.
It does remember the External Certification Authority Program.
The ECA.
Yeah, the ECA.
The digital handshake.
Yes.
That verifies the identity of carriers.
That's the one. That program requires DoD-approved digital certificates for accessing secure SDDC systems.
Another layer of protection.
Exactly, in this interconnected digital world.
It sounds like the DoD has thought of everything.
They've tried to
create a secure and efficient system.
They've put a lot of effort into it.
But with all these regulations and safeguards in place, are there any downsides?
All this bureaucracy and scrutiny inevitably adds complexity and cost to the process.
Makes sense.
Makes you wonder if the FCRP, while ensuring security, might also be creating barriers to entry for smaller carriers.
Interesting.
Or stifling innovation.
That's a good point.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
That the DoD has to constantly think about balancing security with efficiency.
Yeah.
And a diverse pool of carriers.
Makes you wonder if there's a way to streamline things without compromising security.
That's a valid question.
Yeah.
And one that the DoD is probably thinking about, too, as threats evolve.
And technology advances.
Maybe there are ways to use technology to automate some things.
Possibly.
Reduce the burden on carriers without sacrificing security.
Like blockchain or AI.
Yeah. Those are interesting possibilities.
They are.
It seems like the FCRP is not a static system.
It's not.
It has to constantly evolve.
It does.
To meet the changing demands of the military's logistics needs.
And that adaptability is one of the most fascinating things about it.
This deep dive has been really insightful.
It has.
We've uncovered so much about the FCRP.
We have.
From the registration process to the complexities of transporting sensitive cargo. We've explored the DoD's commitment to transparency, accountability, and ethical practices.
It's impressive.
I have a feeling there's still more to uncover, though.
Oh, there's definitely more.
Yeah.
In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to look at some specific case studies.
And explore the potential long-term impact of the FCRP.
On the transportation industry as a whole.
It's going to be fascinating.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
In our deep dive into the FCRP.
Yeah.
The registration process, different transportation modes, emphasis on security, transparency, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But as you hinted, there's always more to explore.
There is.
What else did you find?
Okay. Well,
that might surprise our listeners.
One thing that's really fascinating to me is how the FCRP navigates the whole intersection of national security and economic considerations.
Interesting. So,
well, for example, the McNamara-O'Hara Service Contract Act.
Right, the SCA.
Yeah, the SCA. Yeah. It comes into play to make sure that employees involved in transporting DoD freight get fair wages and benefits.
So it's not just about moving cargo efficiently.
No.
It's also about ethical labor practice. Interesting. So it's a reminder that even in this highly regulated, security-conscious environment, social responsibility is still a priority.
It is a big one for the DoD.
They're thinking about the workers, too.
They are. They recognize that it's important to treat workers fairly.
And the FCRP bakes those values right in.
It does.
That's an important point.
It is.
It shows how the FCRP's impact goes beyond just the logistics.
Right. It affects real people.
It affects the people involved
in
making those movements happen.
Yeah, and it adds another layer of complexity to the DoD's decision-making process.
Right. They're not just looking for the cheapest option.
No, not at all.
Or the fastest.
They're thinking about the ethics, too.
It really makes you realize that the FCRP is more than just a set of rules.
Yeah.
It reflects the DoD's values.
Exacts.
Their values and priorities.
And those values extend to the carriers, too.
They do.
The welcome package mentions
that carriers have to comply with the FY 2019 National Defense Authorization Act.
Right, the NED.
Section 889A1B.
That's a mouthful.
It is. I know we're getting into the weeds a bit here.
We are.
But this section restricts the use of certain telecommunications equipment and services.
It does.
So the DoD is being proactive about cybersecurity risks.
Very much
in their supply chain.
They have to be.
What does that mean for carriers, though?
Well, it means they need to be careful about who they're getting their technology from,
right?
And make sure that their equipment and systems meet the DoD's standards.
So another layer of due diligence?
It is, but it's necessary.
It highlights how important cybersecurity is.
It's crucial in today's world.
Everything is connected.
Exactly.
It seems like every aspect of the FCRP is designed to minimize risk and ensure the integrity
of the DoD's logistics operations.
That's a great way to put it.
And that focus on minimizing risk goes beyond just the registration process.
Right. So what happens after they're in the threat?
Well, carriers have to stay vigilant.
Okay.
They need to be aware of threats.
Okay.
Stay informed about updates and advisories.
Right.
And be ready to respond to anything unexpected.
It sounds like a demanding role.
It is.
But a crucial one.
Absolutely.
In supporting our nation's defense.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It requires a deep understanding of the FCRP and a real commitment to those high standards.
Yes, it does.
As we wrap up this deep dive, is there a final question?
I do.
You want to leave our listeners with?
With all these procedures and regulations in place, what do you think the implications are for the U.S. transportation industry as a whole?
That's a great question.
It is something to think about.
It makes you wonder how the FCRP is shaping industry practices.
Right.
Influencing technology adoption, even driving innovation.
In security and logistics.
It's fascinating.
The FCRP is meant for the DoD, but it could have ripple effects.
Throughout the entire sector.
Exactly. The whole area for further exploration.
We encourage our listeners to keep researching.
Yes.
And delve deeper into those implications.
The resources in the welcome package are a great place to start.
They are.
There's always more to learn.
Always.
About this world of military logistics.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Into the Freight Carrier Registration Program.
A fascinating program.
We hope you found it informative and insightful.
Until next time.